When steel met fire. The day the Pacific ignited, Euro 3, 16 a.m. Western Pacific. Out of the black silence, the sea erupted in flame. Hypersonic missiles streaking at 5 times the speed of sound slammed into a forward U.S. outpost near Guam. Radar arrays disintegrated. Command centers blinked out. It was the opening strike in what was supposed to be a swift and devastating offensive. But something shifted. As the smoke still clung to the ocean's surface, a single silhouette rose through the haze, the USS John F. Kennedy, CVN-79. Not just a ship, but a floating fortress reborn with next-generation radar electromagnetic catapults and AI-guided air wings. Within minutes, the Kennedy responded. Not with fear, but with fury. What turned the tide so fast? What unseen systems activated in that moment of crisis? This wasn't just a naval engagement. This was a warning shot across the Indo-Pacific and the world. If you believe in seeing war not as spectacle, but as a signal, join us. Subscribe, share, and let your voice shape the discussion. The Dawn Strike. The first 6 hours, 04:05 a.m., Indo-Pacific Theater, 120 miles southeast of Taiwan. The USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN-78, pride of the previous carrier generation, had been tracking anomalies in satellite relays suspected spoofing attacks when the first kinetic strikes hit U.S. forward radar installations on Taiwan's northern ridge. Minutes later, a swarm of DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicles, moving unpredictably at Mach 5+, crashed into U.S. Aegis Ashore batteries on Luzon and Okinawa. The region went dark. 5:00 a.m. The Kennedy enters the fight. The USS John F. Kennedy, CVN-79, still undergoing final combat readiness trials just months prior, was now the tip of the spear. As the Ford regrouped and re-established CEC cooperative engagement capability links, the Kennedy, powered by her advanced dual A-1B nuclear reactors, surged forward at flank speed. Unlike her predecessor, Kennedy had one critical advantage. She was built not only for aircraft, but for battle networks. Within minutes, the Kennedy's AN/SPY-6 V1 radar arrays stitched together a new combat picture from surviving drones, F-35C patrols, and stealth reconnaissance feeds from Guam. Emails from concept to combat. By 05:14 a.m., electromagnetic catapults aboard the Kennedy launched 4 MQ-25 Stingray UAVs, followed by 2 F-35Cs without the telltale rumble of steam. It was silent and fast. With a lower maintenance profile, EMAL's electromagnetic aircraft launch system allowed Kennedy to launch 25% more sorties per day than Ford. Those initial air wings painted targets 200 miles across the theater. Row 6, 10 a.m. The first reversal. Chinese J-20 stealth fighters surged toward the American carriers attempting to flank the combat air patrols. But the Kennedy's AN/SLQ-32 Vi-7 electronic warfare suite jammed their targeting, while a second wave of MQ-25s lasered infrared and radar signatures onto J-20s in real time. The result, 3 J-20s neutralized by AM-120D missiles fired beyond visual range. 2 Stingrays were lost, but they had already transmitted full telemetry. 07:30 a.m. Multi-layered defense activated. A coordinated barrage of anti-ship ballistic missiles, ASBMs, was now inbound. The Kennedy's layered defense array sprang to life. Interceptor layer SM-6 missiles, launched from escorting destroyers. Hard kill. Layer evolved Sea Sparrow. Missiles ESSM intercepted mid-range threats. Close-in layer. Phalanx, CIWS, and laser-based Helios systems engaged leakers within 1.5 nautical miles. 7 of 9 incoming ASBMs were destroyed. The 2 that made it through were spoofed by decoys and landed wide, thanks in part to onboard AI threat prediction algorithms, feeding corrections to escort ships in real time. 08:05 a.m. Shift in command doctrine. Rear Admiral Jacob Wolf, commanding the Indo-Pacific Response Group, made a bold shift. Instead of a direct naval counteroffensive, Kennedy would deploy a hybrid swarm, manned and unmanned air assets, deep behind enemy lines to destroy mobile launchers and relay systems. Air Wing 9, now called Wolf's Spear, was unleashed. Geopolitical shockwaves begin. The world was watching. Japan activated Article 9 emergency protocols, repositioning destroyers to support U.S. fleets. Australia scrambled growlers and wedge-tail AWACS from Darwin. The Philippines granted emergency resupply rights to U.S. logistics forces. By 09:45 a.m., Chinese state media claimed a decisive blow had crippled U.S. dominance in the Pacific. But they were 6 hours too late. The USS John F. Kennedy was not only alive, she was in control. The future of power projection had arrived, and her name was Kennedy. The retaliation. Ark Hunter in the deep. 10:12 a.m. South China Sea, 100 nautical miles west of Luzon. While Chinese forces celebrated early wins across media and diplomatic channels, their A2AD anti-access area denial bubble was quietly collapsing. Mobile DF-21D launchers camouflaged in coastal forests were about to discover what a modern U.S. carrier could really do, not just with weapons, but with information dominance. Kennedy's kill web goes live. Unlike previous carriers, the USS John F. Kennedy CVN-79 wasn't built around just flight decks or fighter squadrons. It was built to function as the nerve center of a kill web. Distributed ISR intelligence, surveillance reconnaissance satellites, submarines, MQ-4C Tritons, and forward Army cyber teams streamed data directly to the Kennedy's Integrated Combat Management System, ICMS. Target acquisition time reduced from 26 minutes. Ford class to under 7 minutes. Reaction time to strike. Emails launched strike assets with zero steam. Warm-up reducing time from detection to impact to under 30 minutes. 11:40 a.m. Operation Black Echo Stealth. F-35Cs and MQ-25s from Kennedy's deck refueled mid-air and then broke through the radar dead zone west of Hainan Island. Their mission: destroy mobile ASBM units and communication relays. At 11:46 a.m., precision strikes hit 6 launcher sites. At 11:52 a.m., cyber units aboard Kennedy initiated non-kinetic jamming waves, disabling Chinese over-the-horizon radar nodes along the Paracel Islands. China's situational awareness vanished. Their eyes were gone. 12:35 p.m. Command unification and naval supremacy asserted. By midday, Rear Admiral Wolfe formally designated Kennedy as Task Force Orion Command. All Allied vessels, destroyers, submarines, and logistics ships began routing through her AI-enhanced combat cloud. For the first time, a U.S. aircraft carrier didn't just command the air, it commanded the entire battle space. The Ford, still functional, but battered, shifted to secondary operations. Kennedy became the flagship. 01:15 p.m. Retaliation. Final phase. Air superiority and naval denial. Carrier launched LRSM long range. Anti-ship missiles crippled 2 Chinese Type 055 destroyers attempting to flank from the south. Simultaneously, an aerial hunter-killer package made of F-35Cs and EA-18G Growlers swept up remaining drone threats and early warning balloons. The battle had flipped. In 10 hours, what started as a surprise decapitation strike had become a test of survivability, adaptability, and above all, carrier supremacy. Kennedy's technological superiority in combat. Key takeaways. Emails enabled rapid, stealthy, sustained sorties, 30% higher sortie rate. A-1B nuclear reactors delivered 25% more energy than Ford-class A-1Bs, powering future railguns and directed energy weapons. And Spy-6 radar detected stealth threats 30% farther than legacy systems. Integrated AI reduced decision-making, lag across fire control, ERUPTS and defense. Unmanned integration, seamless coordination of MQ-25 Stingrays, Tritons, and future NGAD assets. 02:05 p.m. Silence falls. After a final wave of aerial dominance, the South China Sea quieted. Not because the fight was over, but because no one dared challenge the Kennedy sphere of control. This wasn't just a ship. It was a turning point. A ship once considered too expensive had now proven priceless. The twist. The hidden hand of the Kennedy. At 15:42 hours, just as the battle reached its tipping point, something shifted. The Chinese carrier group, battered but unbroken, launched its final counteroffensive, a swarm of anti-ship ballistic missiles streaking toward the heart of the U.S. naval formation. Over 20 DF-21Ds in total, maneuvering at hypersonic speed, targeting what they believed was the lead command ship, USS John F. Kennedy. But they were aiming at a ghost. What no satellite imagery had revealed, and what no adversary had suspected, was that Kennedy had silently repositioned herself hours earlier, thanks to a classified stealth mobility protocol supported by drone-deployed electronic decoys. The ship that enemy radar believed to be the Kennedy wasn't. As the Chinese missiles tore into empty ocean or harmless escorts, the real Kennedy had already moved into a flanking strike position, her decks silent but ready. Then came the twist no war planner expected: initiate Spectre protocol. From her belly, the Kennedy unleashed 6 MQ-25 Stingray stealth drones, but these weren't recon units. They had been secretly retrofitted with low-yield electronic warfare payloads, capable of penetrating hardened enemy networks. While the DF-21s failed kinetically, the MQ-25s succeeded digitally. At 15:57, the enemy fleet's radar screens turned to static. Fire control systems rebooted and stayed offline. Suddenly blind, the Chinese carrier Fujian began listing starboard at stabilizers, unable to respond to course corrections. Autonomous surface drones launched hours earlier by U.S. support vessels took advantage of the chaos, firing non-lethal disabling rounds at propulsion systems. The kinetic war was over. The digital war had just begun and been won. By 1611, PLA commanders issued a general retreat order. Without targeting data air support or centralized command, further escalation risked complete loss. But it wasn't surrender out of fear. It was recognition that they had been outmaneuvered by a warship they couldn't even see. In the halls of Beijing's Central Military Commission, the word Kennedy would be whispered not as a ship, but as a doctrine. And in the Pacific, silence returned not as a lull, but as a warning. This wasn't just victory. It was demonstration. The next war would not be won by size nor by legacy, but by information dominant speed and the ability to vanish in plain sight. And the USS John F. Kennedy had all three: strategic and tactical analysis. Why the U.S. won the Battle of the Philippines Sea 2.0 wasn't just a clash of steel. It was a test of doctrine adaptation and systems integration. The U.S. Navy's triumph was rooted in 5 critical advantages: information supremacy, the Kennedy's ability to fuse ISR intelligence, surveillance reconnaissance from satellites, drones, submarines, and allied assets allowed real-time battlespace visualization. Enemy units were detected, predicted, and neutralized often before they even engaged. Distributed lethality. Instead of concentrating power into a single strike group, Kennedy operated as a networked combat node, orchestrating long-range strikes from dispersed units, manned and unmanned. This denied the enemy a clear target hierarchy. Electronic warfare. Dominant Spectre protocol proved decisive. In an age of over-the-horizon missiles and AI-guided drones, blinding the enemy for minutes, even seconds, can mean the difference between survival and annihilation. Unmanned combat integration. Kennedy's drone wing absorbed early losses, scouted deep, and jammed enemy signals without risking a single pilot. The MQ-25s and Tritons weren't supporting assets. They were frontline warriors. Logistics and sustainment superiority. The battle lasted 48 hours. China's combat tempo dropped after 12. U.S. refueling drones, naval tankers, and data relays kept Kennedy fully operational, while the enemy ran blind and dry. Geopolitical consequences. a shifting world U.S. military power. Reaffirmed critics had called carriers obsolete coffins. The Kennedy shattered that myth. America didn't just win. It rewrote how wars at sea will be fought. The message was clear. High-end naval warfare is America's domain. NATO realignment. NATO allies, watching in real time, initiated sweeping reforms. Germany greenlit carrier drone wings. Italy and the UK launched AI-enabled fleet exercises. France proposed a joint unmanned carrier doctrine with the US by 2030. China's strategic recalibration PLA doctrine now faces an existential pivot. Investment is shifting from massed missile swarms to hardened cyber EW units. Carrier development continues, but with a new priority: survivability, not symbolism. Pacific deterrence re-established Taiwan. Japan, the Philippines, and Australia reaffirmed defense cooperation with the US. A permanent, AI-integrated naval base in Guam was approved within a week. The battle is over, but the aftershocks have just begun. The Kennedy didn't just win a war. She rebooted the rules of global power. The battle for the Pacific didn't come cheap. The USS John F. Kennedy CVN-79 cost over $13 billion to build. Her drones, strike groups, and support infrastructure brought the price of victory into the tens of billions. But those billions bought time, preserved sovereignty, and averted a larger war. They also bought something no price tag can define. A message to every adversary: freedom isn't given, it's defended. This wasn't just a naval victory. It was a test of alliances. NATO proved its reach extends beyond the Atlantic. Indo-Pacific partners stood firm not as pawns but as pillars. And nations on the edge, watching, waiting now, know where strength lives. The Kennedy didn't sail into history as a relic of Cold War strategy. She became a living platform for a new doctrine, AI-augmented, drone-integrated, cyber-aware warfare one that fuses human decision with machine precision. But make no mistake, this was also a warning. The next conflict won't wait for parliaments or pundits. It'll arrive at 5 times the speed of sound, cloaked in silence, targeting networks before ships. That's why presence still matters. That's why power still speaks. Peace demands power. Final call. If this made you think, don't just scroll on. Follow now to stay ahead of the next conflict. We break down the tech, the tactics, and the truth behind modern warfare. Because history isn't just written in books, it's being coded, launched, and deployed in real time. Be aware, be informed, be ready.